Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope that you are here because either you or someone you know is thinking about having a baby, pregnant with a new baby, or maybe even has a new baby, and you're looking for information. This is a great talk for people who haven't had a baby yet. And so I think everyone who thinks that they're going to get pregnant or are pregnant should actually watch this talk if you have pets in your home. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, preparing your pets for the arrival of your new baby. Okay. Now, these guys are your existing babies. It's so funny because we treat our pets like they're our children, and really they are our children, right? And they are our babies. But sometimes when the new baby comes, the human baby comes, the dog and the cats kind of get put on the back burner a little bit. But what's most important is to make sure that you are preparing your current babies for the new baby. So these are just some funny things to read. I just like this kind of thing to get started, a nice funny thing. So the cat, of course, wants that baby to leave, and the dog, well, you can read that. So your cats and dogs might not be so keen on the new baby if you don't prepare them first. So how do you prepare your pets for something that's not even here yet? It's still in the oven. How do you prepare your pets for this? So that's what we're going to start with to talk about. First of all, really super duper important to prepare all of their senses for what's about to happen to their life. Animals have much more keen senses than we do. They can hear better than we do. They hear in a range that we can't hear. They see a little differently than we do. And boy, does their nose work better than ours. So humans have 6 million scent receptors. Sounds like a lot till you compare it to dogs and cats. Cats have 200 million scent receptors, and dogs have 300 million scent receptors. And so, really important to prepare all of their senses for what is going to happen when the baby comes. So, we're going to start by talking about the sights of the new baby, right? The things that you're going to bring into the house that are going to be new and different for the animal. So it's really important that you start bringing this stuff in so that the animal starts getting used to all this new furniture and things that you're going to have around, from the crib to the changing table, the bounce chair, the high chair, the diaper receptacle, everything that you think that you're going to need for your baby. It's beneficial if you get that stuff all in now, and it's going to be beneficial to you too when you got everything set up. You also want to think about preparing your dogs and cats for the sounds of a new baby, and they actually make CDs of baby sounds. You can probably download them, digitally as well. But there's several of them. This is one put out by the Humane Society of the United States, and it just has lots of baby sounds on it. So it's got, cooing and, crying and screaming and laughing and all the sounds that babies make. And it's really nice to be playing that in the house so the dog and the cats gets used to the sounds that are about to enter their world. You also really want to think about getting the smells of the new baby into the house. So this one's a little weird just because you feel like, okay, well, I can set up the nursery, but I'm going to buy all this stuff now. I'm going to wait for my shower, my baby shower. No, buy it now. At least one thing of powder and baby lotion and baby oil, and the idea, maybe put it on yourself. Get the dogs and cats used to the smell, because then once the baby smells like this, it's something familiar. Okay, so everything you can think of, the products you're going to need for your baby, it's important to bring that stuff into the house and have the animal. Don't just set the container in the house. You got to actually open it and get that smell on you. I would even go so far as to get a diaper and pour some ammonia in it. And, so it smells like like urine. And so you just wrap it up and, let the dog sniff it so that that dog starts recognizing that scent. It's not exactly what the way the baby's urine will smell, but it's pretty close. So that's something else you can do to prepare that sense of smell. And this one is a real funny recommendation, but I tell you, the people that I've consulted with that actually did this, their animals were much more prepared. You get yourself a baby doll, right? A lifelike baby doll, and you start carrying the baby doll around because that's going to be the weirdness. So you get the dog and cat get used to the things and the smells and the what they hear. But when you're carrying something, what's your dog want to do? What is that? What is that? They're going to want to sniff it. They're going to want to jump up. You much rather they do that and get used to the new rules and things with a fake baby than to have them be doing it with your brand new infant that you just brought home from the hospital. And so while it might feel a little weird, do it. I guarantee it's going to be helpful for your animals. And what you want to do and make sure of is all of these new sights and sounds and scents, and of course the baby you're carrying around, should you should make some positive associations with the animals. So these things should be associated with treats or with toys, playtime, because we want the animal to recognize the thing, whatever it is, whether it's a sight or a sound or a scent, and then get some yummies. In terms of, I forgot to say when I was talking about the doll, make sure you put the lotion and the powder and everything on the doll. Act like you're changing the doll's diaper. Again, all the things that you'll do with your baby, it's good practice for you too, but just it will help your pet immensely and make it a positive thing for them. The other thing that's really important is to start any routine change that you foresee, start it now. Because if the dog is used to going for a walk at a certain time, and you have to change that to alter, taking care of the baby and everything, try to think that through. Try to think about what the routines are going to be for feeding and playtime and walk time with your pets, and start trying to do that new routine now, because we don't want everything to change once that baby comes. So we start with that. If you think you don't want your pet in the nursery, which I would recommend, you want to block access to the nursery now. So you get all the new furniture, you let the dog and cat come in and investigate it all. But then if you think you're not going to let that pet in the nursery, you want to block them from the nursery before the baby gets here. Because again, you don't want all this negative stuff to happen once the baby's there, because animals learn through association. And if they learn that, oh, now we're banished from this room, or, now I don't get a walk every day, and that's all associated with the baby, that's not going to be good. So we want to try to get everything thought about ahead of time and start doing that kind of stuff now. Also, think about, when the baby gets a little older and you're going to have it on the floor, and it's, even before it becomes a toddler, but even when it's a baby that you want to kind of bring in the room, you might not want your pets in the room with you at that moment. And so you, again, want to block off any rooms. It's nice to get the dogs used to being behind a baby gate in a certain room before that baby comes, so that when the baby comes, you can safely have the dog away from the baby at certain times that the baby would be vulnerable. Another thing that we just got to mention, in case you are pregnant or going to become pregnant soon, is toxoplasmosis. So, toxoplasmosis is found in cat feces, in raw meat, and in garden soil. And so, during the first trimester of your pregnancy, they have found that exposure to toxoplasmosis is risky for the fetus. And so, you really got to make sure that you are not the one cleaning out the litter box, and you do not handle raw meat, at least without gloves on, and you wear garden gloves when you're gardening. And so you don't want to get this into your system that might affect the baby. So it's just the first trimester, but just make sure you're careful about that. This doesn't mean you have to get rid of your cat. It just means someone else has to do the litter box. The other thing that's really important is be able to learn how to read your pet's body language. Animals speak to us with their body. They give us signals of how they feel. And, one of the problems is that most pet owners don't know how to read their animal's body language. So they don't really know how they're feeling. Well, when you have a new baby in the house, it's really critical that you learn the signals that tell you your dog is uncomfortable or fearful, because those are things that can lead to badness if you don't recognize it. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you first about understanding dog body language. And the black and white pictures I have in here come from a book called How to Speak Dog by Dr. Stanley Korn. It's a really great book if you want to learn more about reading dog body language. But I just want to point out this is a relaxed dog. So what we see in him, and we see no muscle tension in his body. He's got even weight distribution on all four paws. His tail is just neutrally hanging there, and his face is what we call an open, relaxed face, meaning there's no muscle tension in his face. And so this is kind of our baseline, right? A relaxed dog. So hopefully your dog looks like this a lot. But there are other body signals that you need to understand what they mean. So when a dog rolls over and shows his belly like this, or the belly exposed and the tail tucked and the little front wrist bent and the ears are back and the eyes are kind of closed and the mouth is closed with the corners of the mouth pulled back, that tells you the dog feels threatened by this social encounter. Sometimes they might even dribble out some urine, right? And so this dog is showing you that she's nervous about something. So we see that exposed belly and the tucked tail and the bent wrists and the ears back and that closed mouth. And so I want to make sure you understand that this dog is uncomfortable. This dog does not want you to come up. This dog does not want a belly rub. A dog who wants a belly rub looks totally different. So I want you to look at the difference between these two dogs. And so if your dog shows this, what we call passive appeasement behavior, it tells you that he's uncomfortable. But they also can, show discomfort not by not rolling over and exposing their belly. If we look at this dog, we have that lowered body posture, we have a lowered head, we have the ears are back, we have this paw raise. So they'll often raise one of their front paws when they're anxious. And depending on the floor surface, you might even see sweaty footprints, because the only place dogs sweat is through their foot pad. So when they're nervous, they're going to sweat just like we do. And you see here the mouth is closed and those corners of the mouth are pulled back, and you see that little lick of the tongue, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more. But so when a dog is feeling uncomfortable or threatened, you see that low body posture and that head lower than the back, and you see that paw raise, okay, and that closed mouth. So you want to make sure you can recognize that if you see your dog feeling uncomfortable. Now, I'm telling you all this stuff in reference to being around your baby, but this is stuff you need to know in general, because if your dog looks like this out when someone's approaching, you know that the dog is uncomfortable with whoever that is approaching. So just generally, let's look at some body parts. When dogs put their ears back, that means they're scared. And so if you see your dog whose ears are normally like this, and you bring the baby in and they put their ears back, that tells you they're uncomfortable with the baby and potentially even scared of the baby, and that's not unusual. A tucked tail means a dog is scared. So again, we want to make sure we can see if that dog's tail is tucked, and a lot of times their ears are back, their tail is tucked, and it's just really nervous and scared about this baby. What is this creature that has entered our home? So let's talk about their faces. So would be what we call a happy, relaxed face. So we don't see any muscle tension, the jaw's open and loose. But when a dog is worried about something, their face is going to look worried. Like our face looks worried when we're worried. Dog facial expressions are a lot like humans because they're a social species just like us. And so, they have a lot of different muscles in their face. And so you can tell when a dog is feeling worried about something because you get the furrowed brows, you get the worried lines around their eyes, you just get that worried look on their face. Usually their mouth is closed. So make sure you recognize when your dog is uncomfortable and worried about the situation. So when we look at their eyes, one thing you want to look at is the pupils of their eyes. So the pupil, of course, is the black part. And when the pupil dilates or gets bigger, it tells you the dog is afraid. Now, dog pupils work the same way our pupils do, which means that when it's light out, our pupil is small. But when it's dark out, our pupil is big. So constricted pupil in the daylight, dilated pupil in the darkness. And that's because our pupil dilates to bring in more ambient light. But the other thing that dilates the pupils of animals is a strong emotion like fear. And so if it's daylight and your dog has big pupils, that means the dog is feeling fear. The other thing that we see in dogs is what we call a whale eye. And the whale eye is when the white part of the eyes show. And that tells you that the dog is uncomfortable. So sometimes they'll turn their head because they're uncomfortable. They want to avoid whatever the situation is, in this case, the baby, but they're too afraid to take their eye off the baby. And so they turn their head, but they don't move their eye. The other time we see whale eye is if they keep their head still, but they rotate their eye. So if you see a lot of white, that tells you that that dog is uncomfortable. Other things that dogs show when they're uncomfortable are called displacement behaviors. And displacement behaviors are stress signals. It tells you the dog is stressed. And these usually occur in social situations. So it'll happen, again, with the subject of this talk, when the new baby is around, you might see a lot of these displacement behaviors, which tell you the dog's a little stressed. So one of them is the tongue flick. So they'll flick out their tongue like they're wetting their lips. So it's just a little quick tongue flick, and you want to, pay attention to that because it just means, oh, I'm a little nervous about what's going on here. Another one with their tongue is that they lick their lips like they just had a meal, but they didn't just have a meal. So tongue flicking out or the licking of their lips, those are two displacement signals or stress signals that tell you the dog is stressed. Yawning can be a stress signal too. Now, of course, dogs yawn when they're tired, but when they're yawning in a social situation, in this case, when you're in the living room with them, with the new baby, and you see a lot of yawning, that tells you that the dog is stressed. So I want to show this little video. Hopefully the video is working okay. There's no sound to it, but look at all the mouth movement with this dog, licking his lips and yawning and flicking his tongue. That's because this dog does not like this baby on his back. So while this dog might never bite this baby, this is not appropriate because the dog doesn't like it. And obviously the parents who put this baby on this dog don't understand those signals and don't realize that that says the dog is really uncomfortable with this. And so you got to learn these things because you always want to make sure your dog, and we're talking about dogs right now, is comfortable. If the dog is uncomfortable, showing lots of displacement signals, maybe you move them to the other room for a little while, give them a stuffed Kong to lick all the food out or something like that. Another displacement signal is scratching. Now, of course, dogs scratch when their skin is irritated or they have fleas or something. But again, in a social situation, if a dog all of a sudden starts scratching, that tells you that they're a little nervous. Now, let's talk a little bit about cat body language because some of you might have cats and you want to also prepare your cats just as much as your dog. But we do want to talk a little bit about their body language. And so when we look at the ears of a cat, the top left, we see a cat who's relaxed and their ears are just kind of hanging out there on top of their head. If you move over to the top right, we see a cat who's alert or attentive. And so their ears come closer together with the openings facing forward, attending to whatever it is. So it might be the baby. If you go to the bottom left, that's a cat who's afraid. And so their ears are going to go back. So if you see your cat's ears go back, just like I said with the dog, That tells you that the cat is feeling fear. And if the cat's starting to get agitated, let's say the kitty's in the room with you and the baby starts screaming and that you see the cat's ears rotate sideways, like in this picture, that tells you the cat's getting agitated with that baby crying. And maybe again, you want to put the kitty cat in another room and give it a snack. Whenever you want to remove your pet from the room because you feel like they're uncomfortable, make sure you don't yell at them and you just, move them calmly and gently and give them something yummy. Okay, so they'll be relieved to be out of the space of that weird alien that's entered the house. The eyes, again, like I talked about with the dogs, when the pupils are dilated or really big, that tells you that cat is really afraid. And so you might see this the first time that the cat hears the baby. Now let's talk about their tails. So what a high tail like this is, that's a friendly greeting. So when cats are greeting you, if they're happy about greeting you, they greet with a high flag tail like that. A horizontal tail, like up along the plane of the back, just means the cat's interested in something. But if they tuck their tail, just like dogs, it tells you they're scared. And of course, cats also puff out when they're scared. And so if you see them all puffed out like that, that tells you that they're afraid of whatever it is. And in this case, it might be the baby. Now, if just end of the tail is moving, it tells you the cat is just interested in something. Like my cats sit at the window and watch the birds and their little tail does this. But if their tail starts swishing from side to side, it tells you they're getting irritated. And if their tail is violently swishing, it tells you they're getting angry. So you really want to pay attention to that because that's going to tell you. So people think a wagging tail on a dog means friendliness. It doesn't necessarily mean friendliness. So the rule of thumb with dogs, if the tail's below the horizon of the back and wagging, it's usually friendly. But if it's up high and stiff and wagging, that tells you that that dog is aroused or excited, and it could be excited in a bad way. So watch that wagging tail. But with cats, boy, if you see that wagging tail, it always means be careful, something's going on. The other thing that's really important when you're bringing a new baby into the house is to work on some of the existing behavioral issues that you might have with your pet. So for dogs, if you decide, you know what, we don't want the dog on the furniture once the baby's here, you got to start that training now. Because if the dog is allowed to be on the furniture until the day the baby comes home, again, then it's a negative association with the baby. Now that that thing is in the house, I can't get on the couch. Jumping can be really dangerous when you have a baby in your arms. And so you want to work on that jumping issue. And certainly if you want to take the dog for a walk with the baby in the stroller, you got to work on any pulling behavior if your dog is a bad puller on leash. And then of course we have barking. And dogs bark. It's part of who they are. They're dogs. It's one way they communicate. But you don't want the dog barking when the baby's taking a nap. And at least you want to be able to quiet the dog when the baby's taking a nap. So let's talk about how we deal with those things. So with dogs that like to get up on the furniture, the first thing you want to work on is teaching them the command off. Off means get off the furniture. So don't use down because down means lie down, right? Off means get off of something. And so the way we do it is the dog's on the couch and you show him a treat and you lure him off the couch. And as he's coming off the couch, you say off and you give him the treat. And you do that a whole bunch of times until he associates the word off with the action of getting off the couch. Okay, dogs learn words as associations. And so you want to say that command as the dog is doing the behavior. So they pair the word with the behavior. And then once you've paired it a dozen or so times, the dog should know the cue. And then you say off anytime you see him on the couch and he gets off. Now, place training is just teaching the dog to go to their own place. So it's nice to have a nice cushy dog bed in the living room. So the dog who now can't get on the furniture has a nice comfy place to be when you're all in there as a family. So go to your place is a great thing to train your dog. So again, you use a food lure, you just, guide them to the bed as they're going to the bed. And as soon as they get on the bed, you say place and you give them the treat. And you do that a whole bunch of times until the dog knows when you say place, it means go lay down on your place. It's a great behavior to have, even if you don't have a baby in your house. The jumping, again, can be really difficult. So right now, while you're training your dog not to jump, first thing really important, make your greetings low key, because when you're excited in greeting, it gets the dog excited. The dog's more likely to jump up on you. And you never want to reinforce the jumping, because reinforced behaviors will happen again. And so how do we reinforce behavior? Sometimes we pet the dog, sometimes we say no, off, and we kind of push them down. We're still touching them. Okay. Any attention is a reinforcement for a dog seeking attention. And that's what jumping is. It's an attention seeking behavior. And so what I like to do is have everybody, when the dog jumps, make the jumping chase you away, because that's the opposite of what the dog wants. The dog wants your attention. So if he jumps up on you and you turn and walk out of the room, close yourself in the bathroom or wherever, after several repetitions of this, the dog realizes jumping chases you away. Okay. If you walk in the door, the dog jumps on you. So you practice this, walk in the door, the dog jumps, turn around, walk back out. Do that a whole bunch of times. And usually by the third time you come in, the dog is like, what's going on? Let me try something else. Okay. And oftentimes they'll try to sit, because most dogs know sit. But if they don't, as long as the 4 on the floor, that's what we care about. And then you reward them, give them the attention. So that's how we would work on jumping. And how to teach a dog to sit? Most dogs know sit, but if your dog doesn't know sit, because it's a really nice behavior, just remember that dogs sit all the time on their own. One of the best ways to train an animal to do something is to do what we call capturing the behavior. And so as you see the dog ready to sit, you say sit, and you pair the word with that action, and then you give the dog a treat. And so you do that repeatedly, the dog knows what sit means. So that's called capturing. Another way you can teach a dog to sit if they don't sit on their own, or at least not when you want them to, again, with a food lure, you take the treat to their nose and you bring it up over their head like you see in the picture. And usually when the head goes up, the butt goes down. And so as soon as that butt hits the floor, you say sit and you give the treat. And so every dog should be able to learn how to sit. Now let's talk about those pullers, because again, if you're walking your baby in a stroller, you don't want your dog yanking you down the street. And so one thing that you can do now before the baby's here is work on the stop start game. So basically you walk forward only when there's no tension in the leash. As soon as there's tension in the leash, you stop. You don't say anything, you don't pull back, you just stop. The dog will be like, what's the matter with you? And when he loosens the leash, start walking again. Okay. And then you can also reward the dog with treats when he's not pulling on the leash. Okay. So not only does he get to keep walking forward, but occasionally you say, good boy, and you give him a treat. Okay. So that's the stop start game. Pulling makes me stop. We don't go anywhere. Slacken the leash, we'll go. And so for mild pullers, this works really well. A tool that can help you if your dog is a puller is a front clasping harness. So you basically, the reason that it works is because the leash comes out of the chest rather than out of the neck or the back. And so when the dog pulls and you stop, the tension in the leash pulls that dog's chest sideways, and they're more likely to slacken the leash so that you can start walking again. So front clasping harnesses are really great, and there's a ton of different kinds on the market. The tools you want to avoid if your dog is a puller, the back clasping harnesses, because that puts pressure on the chest. And that's one of the reasons dogs pull, is because they have what we call opposition reflex, which means they pull against pressure. They feel pressure on their chest, they pull against it. All right. The choke chain. The choke chain is not a great tool. First of all, it doesn't help with pulling because dogs pull anyway, and then they're just choking themselves. And a choke chain can damage the trachea. It also cuts off blood supply to the brain. So if you're walking your dog in a choke chain the whole time and he's pulling the whole time, he's basically being choked the whole time. And they just don't know enough to not pull when they're being choked. And the pinch collar. So the pinch collar, it's designed to, when the dog pulls, dig those things into their skin. Now they're not pointed, it doesn't puncture the skin, but it's really uncomfortable. And so we don't need these tools, that when we have more humane tools like the front clasping harnesses. So I urge you to switch from any choke chain or pinch collar to your front clasping harness for pullers. Now, what about barking? Again, I said dogs are going to bark. They bark all the time. It's part of who they are. Some dogs are more barky than others. But what's really important when you have a dog who barks is to be able to turn it off. Okay, so you can't help your dog from barking if it hears a noise, but you can say quiet and turn the barking off. So how do you teach quiet? Similar to what I've said with these other things. When the dog is barking, show him a treat, put it right at his face. He's got a choice. I can stop barking and get this treat, or I can keep barking. Most likely he's going to stop barking. When he stops barking, you say that word quiet, and then you give him the treat. Again, you want to pair the word quiet with the action of shutting up. So the dog starts learning what the word means. And after a dozen or so pairings, you should be able to say quiet. Dog shuts up and runs over to you for a treat. Okay. And so it's a really nice cue to have for dogs that are barky, because when the baby's sleeping, you want to be able to tell them to be quiet. Now, at first, when you're training this, reward it every time. So we build a good reward history for this behavior. And then we want to start rewarding it with treats randomly. Always say good boy, nice little pat. The treats come randomly because random reinforcement actually makes the behavior stronger because the animal never knows exactly when they're going to get the treat. It's like slot machine. Now, you might want to consider crate training your dog before your baby comes if you haven't already crate trained your dog. And the crate can be, once they're properly crate trained and they love their crate, it can be a nice safety place for the dog. Safety for the dog itself away from the baby, but also safety for the baby. And so there's going to be times where you might want to put your dog in a crate. And so in addition to baby gates and things like that. So how do you crate train your dog? Well, get a nice size crate, enough room so the dog can stand up tall, lay down, stretch out. You want a nice big crate. You put it in the room where you spend most of your time, so it becomes part of the furniture. You surreptitiously put treats inside of it for your dog. He's walking through the living room and he smells a treat and he's like, oh, I know where that is. And he goes into the crate and finds a treat. So to the dog, it's like this magic place that produces treats, right? And then once he's going in and out of the crate for treats, I like to use a Kong because a Kong has a big hole to put treats in and a little hole that you can put a rope on, and you tie it inside the crate. Dog goes in, wants to pick up the Kong full of food and take it out, but it's tied in there. So they just lay down and start eating the food out of the Kong. So they're in there longer. And then you start shutting the door while they're eating the food out of the Kong. And then gradually you have them in there longer and longer and longer. And that is a positive association with the crate. And you have built this gradually. So that's the best way to crate train a dog. Now, what about the existing problematic behaviors in cats? And so one really bad one that we got to be careful of around a baby, of course, is play aggression. Cats can be aggressive during play, and we got to work on that now. Scratching the furniture, certainly if you have a cat who scratches the furniture, you're going to, want to fix that anyway, but you don't want the cat scratching on all the baby stuff and jumping on high surfaces. And so if you're preparing, the baby's bottles and your kitty who just used the litter box jumps up on the counter with her little, kitty litter feet, it's probably not something that you want near your baby bottles. So these are things you might want to work on now, again, before the baby comes. So let's start with play aggression. So you got to remember that cats are predators. They're still true predators, unlike dogs that are no longer true predators. And cat play simulates aspects of the hunt. They stalk, they chase, they pounce, they grab, they bite. And cats have very motion sensitive vision because they're predators. And so the slightest little motion can trigger play aggression. And so like your feet under the covers at bedtime. And so it's really important that if your cat does become a little too aggressive during play, that you work on that. So how do we work on that? Well, the most important thing is what I call play therapy. You want to make sure that you play with your cat every single day. Really tire the kitty out with a feather dancer or a laser pointer or something that your cat likes to play with. Get that play energy out. And then if your cat does grab you at any point, one thing that's really important to do, I call it play dead mouse. Because once the mouse is dead, it's no longer a fun toy. And so if you're doing something and your cat grabs your hand, just instead of pulling it back, which is more motion for the cat to go after, just let it die on the table. Just stop moving. And most of the time the cat then loses interest. It's not fun. And then you can redirect them with a toy and toss a toy in the opposite direction. What about that furniture scratching? We know that cats can do quite a number on our furniture, and nobody likes this. So we want to make sure that now you provide proper scratching posts for your cat. Cats like a variety of different substrates. They like that sisal rope. They like short piled carpet, not the loop carpet, because their nails get stuck in it. And they like the cheap cardboard scratchers too. If you have a vertical one, you want to make sure it's tall and stable and doesn't fall over when they're scratching on it. So some cats like to scratch vertically and some like to scratch horizontally. I have both of these kinds in my house for my cats. Also really important, the location. You put the scratching post next to the couch where the cat is scratching. I have one of these tall scratching posts on the corner of my two sofas, and they use that every day and they never touch the sofa. So get them used to using their own scratching posts now. Get the scratching posts into the house now. You also want to make sure you can cut your kitty's nails because you do not want those sharp nails around your baby. And so taking the sharp tip off of the nail regularly, at least once a month, is a really good practice. If your cat will tolerate it, you can slowly get them to tolerate it by, again, pairing it with something good, something they like. You can do one little nail at a time and then give them a treat. All cat nails are clear and you can see the quick. The quick is what they call the blood vessel. And so you always want to cut in front of the quick, but you can see you can just clip off the sharp point, but then they grow back. So you got to do it every 3-4 weeks. Some people will put these soft paws on their cat, especially when they have a newborn baby. Your cat has to be tolerant to you gluing each little thing on their nails, and they pop off as soon as the nail grows at 4 to 5 weeks. That's going to just pop right off. But some people want to do that as well. And then what about the counter roamers? So one of the tools that I like to recommend is called SCAT, and SCAT is just a can of compressed air with a motion detector on top. So you set it on the counter and the cat goes up and it sprays out air. It scares the cat gets off the counter, and you didn't have to be part of the punishment. The counter itself did the punishment. So it just teaches the cats that the counter is not a safe place anymore. Because if you think you're going to stop this by just every time you see the cat on the counter, going over and say, get off the counter, that's not going to help. It has to be the counter itself punishing the cat. And so this is a very benign thing. It's just a spritz of air. It's more of the startle that makes the cat jump down. And so you definitely, this works really well. Now, other thing that's important before the baby comes is make sure your pet is healthy. Make sure they're vaccinated, make sure they're spayed or neutered if they're not already, make sure their nails are clipped, as I said before, and make sure that they don't have any kind of parasites. So really make sure they're healthy. Get a good vet checkup and make sure that they are healthy enough for you to bring this baby into the house. So now the baby's in the world. You had the baby. You're at the hospital with your new little baby. So what's next? You've prepared your pets, you've worked on existing behavior problems, you feel like you have learned how to recognize your pet's stress signals and fear signals, and now you have this baby. So what's next? Well, one of the things I recommend is before you bring the baby home to get some calming pheromones into the home, into the environment. So the calming cat pheromone is a synthetic version of the pheromone that cats emit when they're calm and comfortable out of their facial glands. So when your cat is rubbing on you and purring all over you, they're emitting this pheromone and it's getting on your pants. You can't tell it, you can't smell it, you can't see it, but it's there, they can. And so Feel Away is that pheromone, that calming pheromone. And the diffusers are great because you just plug it in and it diffuses it into the environment. We can't smell it. It doesn't have any adverse effects on us. It wouldn't have any adverse effect on your baby. So just get that plug-in in the house. The adaptal is the dog pheromone, and it is the synthetic version of a pheromone that a nursing mother dog emits. So her puppies are nursing, and out of these special glands along her mammary tract comes this pheromone to calm the puppies. And so these are really great um, uh, things to try to keep that level of anxiety down in your house. They also come in a collar, so if you'd rather just have a collar on your animal, then they have the pheromone face all the time. But either way would be fine. Okay, so now you're in the hospital with your baby, and so your partner has to bring now the actual scent of your baby home. So bring home a blankie or a hat or something that the baby's been wrapped in, so that your pets can take a sniff. So your pets recognize when the baby actually comes home, they've already smelled the baby. Remember, I told you that scent is their number one sense. And so, and animals, both dogs and cats, recognize their social partners by scent. And so if they've already smelled this baby, this actual baby, before it comes into the house, when it comes in and they air scent and say, oh yeah, I know that smell, and they will recognize it. So this is a really important thing to do. Most of the time they want you out of the hospital ASAP unless there's problems with you or your baby, but you're going to be there at least a day. And so you can get that stuff home that night. Okay, so now you're ready to bring your baby home and leave the hospital. And how do we bring the baby into the house? Right. So one of the things that's really important is that mom, who's now been gone for a day or so, goes in first and greets the dogs. So because they have, now missed mom, even if it's only been 24 hours. And so mom goes in, greets the dogs, and then the partner brings the baby in a few minutes later. Okay, because that the animals are going to be real excited to see mom, and so that's a nice way to bring that baby into the house. And then you always want to make sure you introduce the dog to the baby on leash. Don't just let this dog rush up to this baby. Make sure he's on leash, he or she is on leash, and so that you can control the dog's behavior. They're going to be excited. They're going to want to investigate, but you definitely want control over the dog. So you want to have that dog on leash. And so this is not appropriate. Brand new baby and just have an unleashed dog, get right in that baby's face. That is not appropriate. If you look at the picture on the right, you see the dog's ears are back, his mouth is closed, and you see that whale eye. That dog is not comfortable with that baby, and it's really unsafe to have the dog right there sniffing this brand new baby that just came home like this. And so you want to have a more controlled situation. So the dog can be close, but someone's holding the leash, making sure that, gently, you keep the dog away and don't let them get right in that baby's face. And it's also really important not to punish your pet for being curious. So they're going to want to sniff the baby. And if you're nervous about it and you say, no, go away, go lay down, that's going to be a negative association with the baby. So now this thing is here in the house and I'm getting in trouble. And so we want to make sure we don't punish the animal for being curious about the baby. We just control the interactions. And also really super important, never, ever, ever leave your dog alone with your baby, not for one single second. Tragedies have happened, usually when the dog and the baby had been left alone, even for a couple of minutes. It is just not okay to leave the dog and the baby alone ever. Okay. Remember, dogs have very sharp teeth and they can do a lot of damage to an infant. And so we do not do that. And remember also, dogs are faster than we are. So a dog can bite you before you can blink an eye. Okay. So if you are having your dog investigate your baby and your baby pokes him in the eye, you can be right there and the dog could still successfully bite the baby. Okay. It happens so fast, you're not going to be able to stop it. Don't think you can. And so you just want to use caution when the dog, until the dog gets to know this baby and knows it's part of the family. That first few weeks are going to be the most critical. All right. So I look at this picture and I'm going to put a big X through this picture. All right. The dog has belly up. His ears are back. His mouth is closed. You do see a little bit of that whale eye. You see that bent wrist. This dog is not comfortable. So having put the baby on the floor to touch the dog is not comfortable. I look at this and it scares me, right? I put a big X through this too. The dog is giving the baby direct eye contact. He's got a closed, tense mouth. His ears are erect. And again, you see that whale eye. This is not safe and it really scares me. So we have to learn these signals and we have to be super careful. These things are not safe. I see these, I got all these pictures online, right? And people, it's great. And right now these dogs are being fine, but a tragedy can happen in a split second. And so, putting your baby on your dog for a nice picture is not safe. Don't do it. Right. This is just, to me, again, this is a humongous dog. And in a split second, tragedy could happen. So while you want pictures of your family and everybody together, you need to be holding the baby with the dog next to you. And especially in the beginning, that dog needs to be under a little bit of control. This, again, is this kind of stuff that we see. So this, on the picture on the left, this kid is putting the dog's foot in his mouth, and this is what babies do. And this dog could spin around and bite this baby before you can get over there. And this other baby's poking this dog in the eye. And so again, this is what babies do. They just do what babies do. So you have to be the responsible parent and make sure you don't put your dog in a situation that he or she might make a mistake, because we certainly do not want that to happen. There's no reason to get rid of your pets when you're going to have a baby, no reason at all, but you're going to be safe when you have your animals around your baby. And again, I say yikes. And so this dog is right up at the face of the baby, and someone caught this picture of the dog snarling, showing his teeth. This is really, really unsafe. Cats also have sharp teeth and claws, so we got to be careful with the kitties too. And cats are way faster than we are. So again, I hope that video is playing at the speed. It's a GIF, but it shows how quickly a cat can get the baby. I mean, they're very super fast. And so these kinds of things are not safe with the cat either. The baby doesn't know it's a living being with emotions and that it can hurt them. And so you have to be the responsible parent and not let this stuff happen. And certainly not pose the child on the cat just for your picture. Right. So again, I show this video. Hopefully it's coming through. Look at the whipping tail on this cat. This cat is not happy. And in a split second, this cat could jump up and scratch or bite the baby. And so we got to pay attention and we got to be safe. So recognizing those signs of stress, besides the body language stuff I already talked about, we can see excessive barking or whining in dogs, or meowing and howling in cats. We can see restlessness, or conversely, we can see lethargy. Sometimes the animal stops eating when they're stressed. They can become destructive. They can hide. Cats are notorious for this. They're going to hide the first 2 weeks the baby's in the house, some cats. They can stop using the litter box for cats, and dogs might start having accidents, lose their house training. Panting, salivating, excessive grooming, and increased attention-seeking behavior. These are the things you're going to look for, besides all the body language and the signaling I talked about earlier, that tell you that your animal is really stressed about this new baby. So you want to reduce that stress. You want to make more positive associations with the baby, with the food treats, with the playing. The baby has to predict good things so that we can try to reduce some of that stress. Sometimes it helps to give the dog or the cat a calming remedy. There are lots of natural calming remedies. There's a ton of them. This picture just shows the ones that I would recommend. Just because there's a little bit of or a lot of science behind them, depending on which one we're talking about. But you can get all of these online, and so it can be really helpful to help your pets through that first couple of weeks or couple of months with your new baby. So the new baby, remember, takes most of your attention. You might not think that now before the baby comes, and you think, oh, I'll have plenty of time for my animals. But then the baby comes, and it's a reality that you have this infant that you have to take 100% care of, and it takes a lot of time. So we got to think about making sure we provide enrichment for our bored and lonely pets. We don't want them just, realizing, well, this stinks, now that the baby's here, I'm out of the picture, right? So provide them with plenty of appropriate toys, rotate the toys to keep them novel, make sure when an animal's playing, they're in a good mood. We want the animals to be in a good mood. So give them toys, rotate the toys, keep them really novel. Feeding enrichment is a great thing to do for both dogs and cats. You got to feed the dog or cat anyway. And so getting feeder balls or puzzle feeders, really great way to feed your animal. And the animal actually loves it because they love to work for their food. It's mental stimulation, it prolongs eating, and it's a real positive thing. Now, you can buy commercially available feeder balls and puzzle feeders, but you can also just make them out of stuff in your recycling bin. So don't feel like you have to spend a ton of money. You can just put the kibble or the treats in the soda bottle, or get an old egg carton out of the trash, not the styrofoam ones, only the paper ones. Toilet paper rolls, paper towel rolls, soda bottles, all of this can be milk jugs, can be cleaned out and used for DIY enrichment items. We also, again, want to make sure we play and exercise our animal. A lot of times dogs end up not getting enough exercise when the baby comes. They might get a 20-minute walk once a day, or 2 10-minute walks just to eliminate, but they really need to play and they really need their exercise. And cats too, again, get them some exercise. And of course, the most important thing is to give them alone time with you. Right. So it should not always be, we got to be with this baby. Alone time with the owners is really important for the pets to keep that bond strong. And so the pet realizes, I am still part of this family. Okay, so we hope for the happy ending that both the cats and the dogs and the baby, everybody gets along and everybody is just a happy family. And if you do all these things that I suggested tonight, it will go a long way to helping your pets get ready for your new baby. Okay, so that is the end of my talk. Here's my email. You can certainly ask questions now. My email is Kelley@kelleybollen.com. Feel free to email me if you have a question about anything I said tonight, and my website if you want to check that out. I have a behavior tip area on my website for both dogs and cats if you want to look at that and get some handouts on some of the behavioral issues you might want to work on.
All right. Thank you, Kelley. That was wonderful. So we'll give it a few moments just to see if any questions trickle in. But
Okay.
I do have one, so I'll just jump in since I don't see anything coming into the chat or Q&A just yet.
Sure.
So I have actually seen babies playing like on the ground in like a penned up area, and the cat specifically jumping into that baby space. Is it best to leave the cat kind of because he chose to be in the baby space, or is it best to try and remove that cat to prevent anything potentially from occurring?
I think it depends on, first of all, if it's an infant, get the cat out, like a newborn infant, right? As the baby starts aging and moving around, and now they're in their little pen because they're crawling around. It depends on how used to the baby the cat is, what kind of other interactions there's been. Have we seen anything that worries us? But I do worry about that just because if the baby's in the pen and the baby grabs the cat and the cat quickly, but you can't step into that pen quick enough. So ideally, I would probably say most of the time it's not a great idea to have that cat in the pen. So I would lure the cat out with a dish of tuna or some treats or something. So not making it a punishment to come out of the pen, but just, get them out and give them something yummy.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
All right. Any other questions? I don't see any questions coming in tonight.
Okay.
But if anybody does, please, again, feel free to reach out to Kelley directly. I'm sure she'd be happy to, or you can send them to us and we'll make sure to try to get them to get them answered as well. So I just want to thank you all for joining tonight's Pet Talk. Our next Pet Talk is 3 easy acupressure techniques for your pets, and it will take place on Thursday, July 20th at 6 p.m. And while I was saying that, I did see a question come in through the chat. So
yeah, any advice for 2 dogs? Yeah, I just opened it too. So all of this applies the same to whether you have multiple dogs, multiple cats, it's all the same. It's a little harder, of course, to manage 2 dogs, but you definitely want to make sure you do all of this stuff, regardless of how many pets. You might have 3 dogs and 2 cats, or, 1 dog and 5 cats. You got to do all of this stuff with all of those pets. Another thing that I probably should have put in this talk is for dogs is tethering. Tethering is just you put the leash on, you hook them to something so they can be in the room with you and the baby, but they can't get to the baby. So tethering is a really nice nice practice as well, especially if you have multiple dogs and you're like, I can't control all these dogs. So you just put their leashes on and hook each dog to a different, table leg or something. And then you can be in there and they can be with the family. Any advice for an older child, Ebola family through fostering, adopting, or remarriage? I'm not sure if I understand the question. So any advice for an older child? Oh, okay, I get it. Ebola was a typo. Okay, coming into the family through fostering or adopting. Sorry about that. Yes. So again, it's really, so you have an older child, let's say, your boyfriend or girlfriend's going to move in with their child, or you decide to foster or adopt a child and the child is 6 or whatever. I mean, I have a whole nother talk on dog bite prevention for older kids, because it's really important that I get all the stuff I talked about in this webinar, with reading dog body language, making sure that you teach the child things not to do. For example, dogs do not like to be hugged. People think they do, but they don't. Dogs tolerate hugging if they're bonded to you, but they don't like it. It is not affection to a dog, it is restraint. We really have to teach children not to hug dogs because hugging is the #1 bite provoker for children. So more children get bitten because they went to hug the dog. And so we have to teach the child what not to do around the dog. Don't get in their face. Don't give them kisses in their face. Don't hug them. And, how to behave around the dog. Don't pull the tail and grab their fur and, all the things that, that dogs don't like, just like we wouldn't like. So teaching the child is really important.
Thank you. Any other questions? Give it just another minute.
Oh, let me just add one more thing
Oh,
to that.
absolutely.
Yeah, because again, with the positive reinforcement, you have an older kid coming into the house, they can easily throw treats to the dogs. Really important that from that first minute, good stuff happens. And so you bring the kid in and you have treats and he just throws them for the dogs, and lots and lots and lots of positive association.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think that's it, unless anything trickles in the next moment or two. Again, thank you so much for speaking tonight, Kelley. It was wonderful to have you back as a Pet Talk speaker. And for those of you who are interested in our next Pet Talk on July 20th, the link is in the chat if you were interested in signing up for that as well. I hope you guys all enjoyed and have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.